Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. I'm your host, Michelle Berard, founder and CEO of Michelle A. Berard LLC, and I'm really happy to share this hour with you where we examine all those places where spirit meets life and the joys and challenges that may bring. And you guys have been listening for a while, so you know that I like to start by thanking Ms. Beverly Black and Tribe Family Channel for helping me create this space for us. Tribe Family Channel is home to an assortment of thought-provoking shows that explore life, spirit, business, and culture, including The Woman at the Well, hosted by Ms. Beverly Black herself. Somewhere in the Middle was born on Tribe Family Channel, and though we have grown onto our own platform, we are ever grateful and loyal to our roots. To paraphrase an African proverb, we are here only because we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. I want to say thank you to my guest on the July 21st show, massage and wellness business consultant Gail Wood. You can connect with Gail on social media and at her website, www.elevatewithgail.com, and that's Gail spelled Gael. If you missed that show, make sure you listen to the replay. You can find our complete show archives, including the July 21st show, at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. I also want to shout out Bruce George of the Genius is Common movement, which encourages all of us to embrace our inner genius and share it with the world. You guys know, I think this is a really important message. We should share it with the kids, but also we adults need to be reminded sometimes that the world needs our genius. Learn more about the Genius is Common movement at www.geniusiscommon.com. Now, this month's guests inspire educators and parents to help children become their best selves. Connie Johnson is a graduate of Tuskegee University with a BS in elementary education. Later, her heart required that she equip herself with new ways to help her students work through traumas and become their greatest selves. She then went on to earn her master's in education from the University of West Alabama. Connie has worked in the field of education for 17 years, and she is in her 8th year as an elementary school counselor. Her prime objective is to impact our students for greatness. In 2022, she co-authored with her father, Rufus Stephens, an exceptional book entitled Leave a Mark. Amazon released the book as its #1 new release in the education and teacher category. Rufus Stephens is a native of Savannah, Georgia. He graduated from Savannah State University and pursued a graduate degree at the University of Florida. He is a former business owner, corporate executive, and an ordained minister. In 2015, he formed a speaking company called Raisin the Rufe Communications. He is a motivational speaker, author, and voiceover talent. Rufus has authored 2 books. The first, Life Lessons from Miss Mattie, chronicles the life of his mother, a single mom of 5, an educator in the Deep South. He co-authored his second book, Leave a Mark, with his daughter, Connie Johnson. Mr. Stephens' life is defined by his unrelenting passion for encouraging others. His presentation goal is to always leave audiences better off than when they came. So I would like to welcome Connie Johnson and Rufus Stephens to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. Connie, Rufus, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for having us.
Well, I'm really excited. You guys are a special team, and I want to get into all of that and how you all started working on this project together. But if you're familiar with the show, you know I like to start with 2 questions. So you'll have to decide who goes first with answering these.
Okay.
Connie, Rufus, who are you, and how did you become who you are today?
I'll yield to my daughter.
Well, collectively, we are Daddy Daughter Books. And the way that we got to Daddy Daughter Books was during the pandemic. We were talking. My father is a public speaker, and I was kind of his road dog along the way. And so he was getting ready to write a speech entitled Leave a Mark. And we talked through it, and then I pitched like, hey, this should be a book. And he was like, yeah, this should be a book and we should do it together. And I thought, no, you should do it and I should be your cheerleader. But eventually we wrote it together. And when we decided what will be the company that supports Leave a Mark, we had to go to Daddy Daughter because we are a Daddy Daughter team. But growing up, my dad would take my sister and I on little dates individually and sometimes together that we call Daddy Daughter dates. And so we thought, what else could it be but Daddy Daughter books? So that is who we are. And that's kind of how we got here.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's really beautiful. So you're a close-knit team. What is Leave a Mark? First of all, what is Leave a Mark about?
Leave a Mark. At first, I was thinking about living intentionally and just don't hang around here and, some carve your name on a tree, Rufus was here. I mean, be intentional about your life. And that I heard a quote by Van Jones that I thought was absolutely wonderful. He said, we die twice. We die when our body dies, and we died the last time people stopped calling our name. And I said, oh my God, that's and so that's what we start talking about. Leave a mark. What did the songwriter say? Let's give them something to talk about. and so we talked about that. And when it comes to, I was thinking just more generally, and then Connie and I kind of focus and kind of pulled it in and focused on the idea of education and leaving a mark on children. And what the book does, it gives you an example of 7 marks that you can leave on children that will serve them well for life. There's an 8th mark, but that's the one you want to avoid. And so that's what drives the book. It's a short book. It's meant to be completely consumed. It is meant to be able to touch, hold, feel, and apply. And it seems to be landing very nicely with educators.
So this isn't a book for parents. This is a book for educators in particular.
Well, I say influencers of young people.
Okay.
One of the person who wrote the foreword came back after she read it, and she said, "Listen, as a parent, you're talking to me," and she's an educator. I can see where clearly the educator will use this, but any influencer of young people will find this very useful.
I like to say that good educators are like good parents. They are very much similar. They want to leave many of the marks that we reference in our books on their children, whether you're a parent or an educator, and they're kind of one and the same. So it is definitely an ode to educators, like a somewhat of a tribute to all that we do, as I am an educator, all that we do as educators, but it is definitely easily applicable to parents as well.
So give me some examples, if you don't mind, Connie, some ways that educators and parenting overlap.
Ooh.
Because parents care about their kids. And I'm an educator, but I started off as a school teacher, and now I'm a school counselor. This is my 10th school year as a school counselor. And so I obviously got some heart. I'm a caring person. I'm the soft parent of the two. Like, my kids know that if they want a yes, they should probably start with me. I'm that person. So I think parents are generally caring and supportive, and they're your biggest champions. One of my favorite quotes is by Rita Pearson, an educator as well, who says, "Every child needs a champion." And I feel like parents are the first champions that a child has or should be. But on the flip side of that, we don't just love them, and just have no bounds. I think there's accountability, there's discipline. And one thing that educators know, and I've spent most of my educational career in elementary school, so we have lots of parameters and structures and routines. And sometimes to those who don't live in the education world, it may seem a little strict, but kids thrive on that accountability, that empowerment, that encouragement, that routine that helps them to know that I belong here, I can make it, I can do those things. So I feel like parenting is both and, we love them, but we're going to hold you accountable. And education is the same way. Good teachers love their students know that they love them, and their students are willing to do for them because they know that they love them, and those teachers are holding those kids accountable to do what needs to be done. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Well, and Rufus, I have to ask you now a question about your parenting style, because clearly you have a very distinct parenting style. I know my dad never had daddy-daughter dates with my sister and me. And I have kids, I've been married, and so I know that men bring something unique, I think, to parenting, where what I felt was that my kid's father encouraged a little bit more of the adventurous side of them to come out, kind of push out of the comfort zone a little bit side, while still being within boundaries of safety and feeling safe and protected. Whereas I tended to be more like, be careful. Don't fall and break your arm, that kind of thing. What do you think that you brought to your parenting experience, you as a man, brought to your parenting experience that helped to rear this beautiful daughter, two beautiful daughters that you now partner with one of them on doing books?
Well, yeah, I think that I was singularly focused on being a good parent a good father, because I didn't have one. I had, I was raised by a single mom. My dad was around, and I knew him, and I grew to love him, but he had no impact on my life at all. And so when I had children, I meant to love them. I meant to let them know that they were loved. I meant to let them know that there were limits. And without even realizing, and let them know that there's great power in laughter. It can solve, it can lift a lot of situations. And they have we laugh about so much. Her sister and I were talking about how we used to travel in this little blue and brown Voyager across the country and laugh until we cried in the car, and so that was something. God has given me a little laughter gene, a little twisted gene, and they've gotten some of it. But I'm their, Connie talked about champion. I'm their champion. I'm the one there, and their late mother sat on the bleachers and listened to them sing the oldest sister, who's 4 years older. She would sing 16 songs for the Christmas concert. Fast forward 4 years, and we were on the same bleachers with the same dead bottoms, listening to 16 songs that Connie now is singing, same 16 songs, and I'm checking them all. But we were committed to parenthood, and when I look at them raising their children, I just smile. I just say, the apple didn't fall far. They're excellent moms, and and it shows in their kids. So I'd like to believe that I brought structure. I brought love that was never in doubt. And also, I love words. And so I think they got, especially Connie, her sister is no slack, but Connie is like me. She's a wordsmith, and she loved it. I used to tell all the time, words are efficient. And so choose them so that you don't have to use a whole lot of them to say what you're going to say. And so I went a long way to say a short thing for you, but that's it.
Well, I think that's a wonderful thing that you said. And I think it's really interesting. You said that your father didn't impact your life, but his lack of impact actually impacted you greatly, because it showed you what you didn't want to be.
But you know what? You nailed it. You really did, because there are 5 of us. There are 4 boys and 1 girl, and all 4 of the boys are good dads. And I used to tell Connie and those, in fact, I still tell them, I'm a good dad because I meant to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't, if you call me a good father, their friends say, your dad is something else. Well, I meant to be. I would thank you for the success. And so your point's right. It was something that I never wanted to be. The pain and everything else I went through by his absence or his neglect. in some way drove us. You're exactly right.
Well, Connie, how do you feel as a parent now, kind of looking at, how your dad reared you guys and how you rear your kids? And do you feel like, hey, I'm doing this better? What do you feel like and as an educator too, because you've got an advantage over, the rest of us, right? Because you studied child psychology to some extent, you've studied, how they learn and all of that. How do you feel? What do you think that you bring to parenting that maybe is different or unique, or that enhances what your dad taught you and your mom taught you about parenting?
I think that's so funny listening to him talk about sitting through all of our concerts. And my kids are very involved in church as well as in school, and I'm there for all of it. And I don't think that he necessarily instructed us that you show up for your people, but that is the drumbeat of my life right now. I just feel that it's so important to show up for your kids, even to the stuff that you don't think is really important, because they may not remember that you came to every single one, but they will remember that one concert you didn't show up for, or that one time you weren't there. So I think that that's something he's passed on and I didn't even really know. But I think one thing that's different, and I saw a shift in my parenting when I went back to school to get my master's degree in counseling. And so as a counselor, it's very different than being a teacher, because teachers do lots of talking, but counselors do lots of listening. So usually when students come to my office, they might be getting sent to my office because they're having an outburst, they made some poor choices in the classroom, whatever the case may be. But I'm quick to tell teachers, do you want them to be in trouble? Because they're in the wrong office. But if you want someone to help them think through their choices, if you want someone to listen to them, to figure out why they're behaving in the way that they're behaving in your classroom, I'm the person. And so that has transferred over into the way that I parent. I don't necessarily parent the way that the textbook way that we were taught to listen, or the active listener of so what I hear you saying is, but it is reflected in my response to you. Mm-hmm. And one of the chapters actually is on listening, and it's based upon the story in there is based upon my now almost 19-year-old and his critique of my parenting. And he was telling me something about how he felt about something, and I was saying, okay, well, thank you for sharing, basically. And he said, well, it doesn't really matter how I feel about it, because you're going to do what you want to do, or you're going to, basically there's no point in us continuing to talk about this because you're not listening to me, is what I heard. And it really stopped me in my tracks, because I, like my dad, I think I'm a pretty good parent. I try really hard to be a good parent. And so he was kind of calling me on that. When I'm a parent, there's some stuff I'm gonna do differently than how you've done it, and you're not really listening to me. And so I think I really am intentional about listening to my kids and getting to know them as individuals, because one of them is very similar to my personality. And so I get them more easily. And one is very different, very much like my husband and her dad. But that doesn't make them any less of who they are. And so I think what parenting has taught me, and really my time learning about counseling, is that it's imperative that you listen, and that everybody is different, and you need to know what makes them tick, because what works for anybody, any parent who has more than one child will tell you that what makes one tick doesn't always make the other one tick. And so just getting to know my kids individually and listening to their feelings. I still get the final say, but I hear what you're saying, and what you're saying does have the ability to influence the choices and decisions I make. So that's probably something I've taken.
So how do you guys feel that knowledge, that experience that you got and what you put into the book can help educators do their jobs better? And when I say educators here, I am referring mainly to teachers, because teachers, in fact, I was just talking with my brother-in-law earlier today saying, teachers have a hard road to hoe. And I've been a parent of kids in school where I've been like, I do not like this teaching thing. I don't care for the way the public schools are structured in particular and the things that go on there. And so, and I felt that the teachers were, what do I want to say? Unable to really focus on the individuality of the kids, even in schools where they claim that's what they do, because there's so much other stuff, right? That's happening, the bureaucratic stuff, the, all kinds of other things going on. How can your book help teachers in particular in that part of the education system really do their jobs a little bit better, but not, because we're dealing with teacher burnout. I have a kid who wanted to be a teacher. She was coming out during the pandemic and was like, this is not for me. You know what I mean? It was too much. How can your book, do you think your book has the ability to help people in that way? And if so, how?
Connie, I'll yield to you.
Okay. I would say absolutely. And really, when we were writing this book, I had a specific colleague of mine who has since retired. In my mind, I thought if she reads this book, it cannot be a bunch of fluff. It cannot be a just love the kids, but it needs to be something that those teachers who have been through the bureaucracy, who have been through administration changes, and this is the new initiative with this person, and oh, that initiative is gone in 2 years, and now we're on to something else, and all of the things that burn teachers out. That this is the book that says, we see you, and we know that what you're doing is valuable, it's meaningful, it's purposeful, and the stuff that you think is one more thing to do is really the foundation. And here's reminding you that you can do it. And here are some quick, easy ways that you can do it. Here's some attainable ways that you can do it. And so I kept having that colleague in my mind. I was like, if she ever reads this, she cannot be feeling like did not do a service. Did she really teach? And I also felt like anybody who's in the trenches, I never wanted them to read the book and go like, she's in La La Land. She doesn't know what it's like. So I do think that it has the ability to breathe life into those of us who have experienced some tiredness or are in a season of exhaustion or overwhelm. I know that one of the districts that I'm familiar with, they just got 2 brand new curriculums last school year. So teachers who were veteran teachers were telling me, I feel like a novice teacher because I don't know I'm learning the curriculum with the kids and we have to do it with fidelity. And they were just feeling that overwhelm. And well, worrying about how Jimmy feels today kind of is on the back burner if I'm held to these test scores and held to these standards. And so it is an encouragement, but at the same time, it gives bite-sized, attainable ways for them to actually do those things. Yes, we do think in the mark of visibility, we talk about like, yes, it is important to see every student, kind of like what I said with raising my kids. It is important to see each kid and know how each kid is doing, but you don't have to do a, check-in every single day with all 22 or 25 or 30 of your students.
Yeah, I was gonna say 30 sounds more like it.
Yes, in my state, 22 is the cutoff for 4th grade and below, and then, whatever with the big kids. But it's giving them attainable ways to check in with Johnny today, check in with Marco tomorrow, check in with Sally the next day, and really using that time so that they're not burnt out, but that their students see them and they see their students. So absolutely, I believe it has the ability to do that.
So Rufus, you envisioned this article at first. Connie saw it as more. What were going to be your 3 key talking points in the original article, in the original speech?
Well, I think it was about empowerment. It was about and Connie and I talked it from the very beginning, but if you show there are 7 in there, but probably the 3 drivers, if you will, would have to be visibility, empowerment, and I don't know. Connie and I would probably be back and forth on this. It's either caring or belonging.
Yeah.
The foundation that the book sits on, and Connie kind of opened my eyes to this, is on relationships. It's all about relationships and how you park these relationships so that you get the best result from your interface with the kids. Mm-hmm. And so Connie said, I like the choice, bite-sized pieces. It's not this heavy big thing of 916 pages that good luck. You know, it's what, 67 pages? And it's meant for you to get in. There are activity pages at the end of each chapter and that kind of thing. So those would be the 3, I think, that would be big drivers. Now, there are others in there that are very impactful. The one that the first one you come on is called Painful Marks. And that one's very, very, I wrote that because it's, I can relate to that because I got some of those coming through. And I saw throughout the education system that a lot of other people were getting those marks, and it didn't have to be. In fact, a lot of the teachers were applying those marks inadvertently. They didn't realize they were doing it, but the kids were no less damaged because of it. So the 3 or 4 items.
What's an example of a painful mark?
Well, let me give you, I opened the chapter with me being in 8th grade. And I was in algebra class, 9th grade, I think 9th grade, in algebra class. And I will refrain from saying the teacher's name because it's still fresh in my mind. I had scored badly on a test. She was passing out the papers, class of 25, 30 kids. And she'd call out the names and give the ticket. And then she said, Stephens, and she was giving me my paper. I got a D-. She said, I'm giving you a D-. I wanted to give you an F. And I said, well, thank you very much. And here I am, a senior citizen, still talking about that mark. And it need not have been, she would have done the world a favor by just keeping her mouth shut. Give me my D- and let me go home and deal with that. Because she had nothing positive to say. The other thing that I see in classes, and I saw this beyond her and many, many teachers, they have very smart children in the class. Let's say there's 25 kids in the class, you got 3 stars. I meant they blow the roof off in trigonometry, whatever it is. Name the subject, they just handle it.
Mm-hmm.
They set the curve on, every time. Teacher asks a question, and she naturally turns to them for the answer. Then you have what I call tweeners in the book, people that are between the D and the A. And they have the answer too, but they never get the answer because she's gone to Jason or to Erica, who always nails it. And I call that a classroom caste system that doesn't work well. And kids suffer from it. Kids get that's a bad mark. And then the final one in that particular one is about a guy named Shantram Hawkins, who, and we list 7 things that he said people said about him. He is now a doctor of education and doing very, very well. He lived beyond his negative prophecies. And that's what I was talking about. Painful marks that you can leave on kids if you aren't careful. And they need not be.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned algebra because I was starting to wonder, is it only algebra teachers who do this? I distinctly remember my algebra teacher. And I was doing great in math until this particular teacher. I don't know if it's just something about algebra. Maybe algebra makes teachers angry sometimes. But there's also research related to what you've been talking about. For example, the teacher turning to certain students who always, quote unquote, have the answers and others not getting a chance to answer questions, or assuming that in English class, the girls will know the answer because girls tend to be more verbal than boys and things of that nature, at least when they're younger.
Mm-hmm.
Did you all rely on any of that research or pull in any of that research? Or were you relying primarily on your experiences as a teacher and as a student and as parents?
Yeah, well, in my case, it was just anecdotal. I saw it, I didn't need the research. I saw it in so many classrooms.
Well, and Connie, I know you're familiar probably with some of the research I'm mentioning that, about, what do they call it? Inherent bias, I think, in education.
Inherent bias and the self-fulfilling prophecy that Chandran ran ahead of. As he was saying that, I was like, yes, self-fulfilling prophecy. We're always talking about you get to speak, you can speak that on somebody's life or show that into them, and it's just not okay. So
Yeah,
yes.
that makes it so difficult for children because they don't have a way to process from a more dispassionate position. They just kind of take on board whatever it is that we're saying.
Connie has I can't remember all of it, Connie, I know you do. What's the quote that, teachers get to edit? Yeah, it's a great quote. You remember? Yeah.
Thanks. We are the one of the few, I will say, we get the opportunity to edit someone else's life story, and we can just change the trajectory. Most of us, we're writing our own story, and my father has a quote, so make it a page turner, live your life intentionally and on purpose. But as educators, we get the opportunity to edit someone else's life story.
That's beautiful. That's really a beautiful way to think about education.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, it's just, Connie lives real close to it. I saw it because we come from a family of educators. My mother was a serious educator. In fact, my first book was about her, and Life Lesson with Miss Mattie. And I mean, she was educator of the first order, and I mean, she impacted people's lives. And, teachers, I'm listening to both of you talk, if they aren't careful, correct me if I'm wrong, they get so burnt out, they've forgotten how impactful they can be. I'm busy trying to teach to the test. I'm trying to do this, and then the other bureaucratic stuff, and then I'm hearing rumblings about something else going on, and you forget your greatness, that you got the ability to impact. I think one of the quotes in the book is this: teachers affect all other professions. Everybody who became anything had to pass through a teacher. And that's huge.
Well, I'm really interested in one more thing before we start wrapping this up, and that is, how do you guys actually work together as a team? I mean, what does that look like?
Connie?
I would say lots of conversations. We have long conversations. He's in Florida, I'm in Texas. So we are not usually in the same room while working together, but we definitely are just in communication as just the normal course of things. He's my dad, so I'm contacting him, communicating with him, but then we're always talking about how we can leave a mark out there, what we can do differently, how we can support it. He hears all of my stories of education, and he's more of our marketer, if you will. And so we work together and just kind of in our own skills and our own strengths, just working together. What needs to be done for this? What's coming up next? Who's going to take the lead on that? Anytime we have a podcast like this or interviews, we always have to put our heads together before we get out there. So usually a lot of conversations on the phone and emails and stuff like that.
And that's not atypical. We have been talking ever since she arrived in the world. And so that's just, And then but our conversations are more pointed. We don't talk every day, but when we do, it's good for an hour and a half to 2 hours. But when it comes to the book, the wonderful thing about, I think, working with your daughter when you got a great relationship, there's no one-upsmanship. I want her to win. Everything and whatever, I want her to win, and I brag about her and that kind of thing. She brags about me. And so we sit down, we're very intentional. We talk about how do we get the biggest bang for the buck out of this book. This is clearly a good book, and at the risk of sounding self-absorbed, we've done good, and I think that we've introduced this book to everybody from Columbia University to Alabama University, and because we think we have something that's substantive and useful, practical. How many books are on the shelf, never read it, but loved buying it, and that was the end of the interface. It goes on the shelf and it gets dusted frequently. So our interface is good, and we normally come away winning. We come away with results. I remember when Connie was saying well, Daddy, I'm not sure about this book. I'm running all over the place. So what I did was I wrote an index of topics. And I remember when she got it, she bounced back. She said, "This sounds like momentum." And we never looked back. So yeah, the interface is something we both look forward to, and we always win when we come out.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Well, Connie, Rufus, how can people get your book, number one, and how can they connect with you?
The book is on Amazon. Leave a mark, and the easiest way is that when you leave a mark, put Connie Johnson, it'll come up. There's a picture of it right there.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. It's you can also reach each one of us. You can reach me at Rufus D. Stephens @gmail.com. And Connie, give them yours because I forget it sometimes.
It is Connie Johnson, author, also at gmail.com.
Are you on social media?
We are, but not as daddy-daughter books.
Yeah. We are individual. I am as a professional speaker, and we do some things on Instagram. We're forming that solid social media platform as we speak. So
awesome. So soon, guys, you'll be able to connect with Connie and Rufus on social media, particularly Instagram. So just keep your eyes open for that. You can probably email them and get that contact information.
Sure, and go right to Amazon for the book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Leave a mark. You're going to put in Connie Johnson to find it, right? Leave a mark, Connie Johnson. Right. Put that in the search bar at Amazon.
Yep.
Awesome. Connie, Rufus, thank you so much for being on Somewhere in the Middle. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Michelle.
So that's our show this month, guys. You can reach me online at michelleberard.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Urban Book Editor. Feel free to send in some topics you'd like us to cover on the show. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you tune into the show on September 15th when my guest will be LinkedIn strategist Daniel Alpha. You can find us once a month on Fridays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern at the Somewhere in the Middle podcast.com. Let's continue the conversation. You guys be good, stay mindful, and remain prayerful. Peace and blessings, y'all.